Welcome to the Star Podcast.
Whoa. Star Podcast.
Welcome to the Star Podcast, hosted by Nat. Each week, we share tips and stories from safety, trucking, and recruitment, and everything in between. Listen now.
Today I get to sit down with Renee Guay, who shares stories about her father and workplace illness. And Renee also shares some really important information about safety culture and embedding safety into companies to make it a safer place and for people to feel comfortable speaking up when they feel like something maybe is unsafe. And her story is emotional, and I feel for her and her family, but I just want to thank her so much for joining us because she definitely shares her father's story in such a lovely way, and she's just a really amazing person, and I'm so thankful to get to speak with her and learn her story and her father's as well. And I also want to thank Susan from Threads of Life, who again set me up connected me to Renee. She's connected us now to a few of the podcast guests, and I'm so very thankful for that because they've all been so excellent, and I'm just really grateful to be able to share their stories. So listen now.
So I just want to take a minute and thank you so much for joining us today and taking the time to speak with us. So welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I was hoping to get started. If you could just just introduce yourself and share a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so I'm Renee Guay. I was formerly a health and safety manager for 15 years for demolition, transportation, heavy industry, and also as a consultant for environmental and health and safety. And I also inspected asbestos removal operations for many years. And I just loved it. I loved being in a hard hat and work boots and inspecting abandoned buildings. There were times where I thought to myself, like, this is amazing. I'm getting paid to do this. This is great. So being at old hospitals or football stadiums, it was fantastic. And I also trained drivers on transporting asbestos safely. And today we're going to talk about mesothelioma. And back then, I could barely even pronounce that word to the drivers until it became a household name. So prior to this, I'll just add one more point here. Although I trained workers in health and safety and so on, I'm out of that at the moment, but I can't even recall because life was such a blur at that time, how I came across Threads of Life. And it's interesting that I became more confident speaking in front of large group because I was really terrified at first. But yet the purpose of my story just gave me this courage and this fire inside myself to put that fear aside and to be able to share my story in hopes that it will help other people.
Oh, that's so amazing. So you touched on Threads of Life, and I just want to thank Threads of Life because they connected us. They've connected me with other stories and other podcast episodes. So I'm very thankful for Threads of Life and all the work that you and Susan and Eugene and Emily are doing. So thank you so much. Can you share a little bit of how you got connected with Threads of Life?
Yeah, I can't even recall. It was such a blur how I became connected, but I somehow found them. I think it was online, and asked my mom, hey, like this might be really supportive for us. It was about a year after my father passed away. And we ended up attending one of their family forums in Barrie. And it was so good, so healing, being able to connect with other people that have experienced a workplace tragedy with a family member. And yeah, there's so many different lovely things that Threads of Life offers for support. And their website is a plethora of information for workers as well.
Absolutely. So can you share a few details about your father and share this story with us?
Sure. So my father worked as a stationary engineer for 35 years. So he worked in basically the plant operating all of the machinery to keep the plant running. And he had mentioned that there was asbestos signs on some of the machines and in the areas. So although he didn't directly handle asbestos, he was being exposed to it in the air where the fibers were floating around. And 2011, he had a cough that he just couldn't seem to get rid of, which was very unusual for him, for someone that pretty much worked out every single day. At that point, well, I'll explain a little bit about asbestos, meaning It was once called this miracle fiber. Typically, you will still see it, although it's banned in Canada now. Anything existing, of course, exists in so many different areas, but you'll likely see it on elbows. Since it was called a miracle fiber, it works really well. But the problem is, when with any kind of building material, it will degrade over time. And so then fibers are inhaled, it can get lodged in your lungs and cause scarring and inflammation. And the damage doesn't show up until 20, 30, sometimes even 40 years later. And so the most common diseases from asbestos exposure is asbestosis, lung cancer, and mesothelioma. And what my father was diagnosed with was mesothelioma, which only has a 2% survival rate, where you typically live only 8 months to 2 years. And for my father, it was only 10 months. And I remember the call when he called and he said, I went to the doctor and I just knew it. I knew that I was being exposed to asbestos at the workplace, even though he didn't handle it directly. And his brother, my Uncle Pierre, also worked at the same plant, specifically removing asbestos. And he had also mentioned without a respirator for almost 20 years. And he was diagnosed with asbestosis in 2014 and unfortunately passed away late last year from several complications.
I'm so sorry about your father and your uncle. Like, that's just heartbreaking because they just think they're doing their job. They don't realize anything's, well, it sounds like your dad thought maybe there was something going on. But I mean, how do you know? You think you're doing everything safe and your workplace doesn't tell you anything. So,
right.
Oh, well, I'm very sorry to hear that. That's,
yeah. Thank you. And that's an interesting point that you say about he should have known. I mean, he was on the health and safety committee. There should have been an asbestos management program on all of the machines that he was working in and around, identifying with a sample those asbestos elements, right? And where they're located and are they being checked every year? Him not having that information, I mean, if he had that information, he could have taken more action to be able to redoing this every year. Are we maintaining this, right? So it's just also lack of information that was provided to him, where
right.
that was a legal requirement, right?
Was there still as much, because you hear, I mean, I'm not super familiar with asbestos. Like, I'm glad that you're here and you're sharing this information because, I mean, I've heard of asbestos, but I didn't know, like, the details of it. So was there less, like, awareness of it at the time that your father and uncle were working there, or was it already well known that it could harm you? Do you know what I mean?
I think that's an interesting question because my uncle was there to remediate and patch up, repair the asbestos. So they knew it was breaching. They knew that people were being exposed. There was no confirmatory air samples. There was no asbestos management program, yet they knew, we still better remediate this, right?
Well,
so it just seemed to be kind of brushed under the carpet, right? Or maybe thinking, and I think it's that, with a chronic illness, people think, well, it's okay. Nothing's going to happen. It's 20, 30, 40 years down the road. Let's just patch it up and just kind of keep it quiet, right? I think there's this element of people thinking it can't happen to them, right?
Right. So in your opinion, what can we do to help keep people safe, or how can workplaces help keep their workers safe? What can the employee themselves do if they feel like something's off maybe in their workplace?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a big can of worms, right? Because
yeah,
I feel like workers are in this position of, okay, I need to get this job done and I need to get food on the table for my family. If I speak up and it's not a culture that is going to be supportive, they're risking all of acknowledging that, it's going to take courage to be able to speak up, and it's worth it, whether it's for your own life, your families. And the thing with asbestos too is, if that's the context in speaking up to your employer, exposed to asbestos, it's going to be in your hair and on your clothes, and you're taking it home. So back in the day, when Quebec was, I think it was the biggest exporter in the world, there were many wives and children that were being affected by the workers that were not being protected and they're taking it home. This still happens today. Right? And then the woman is going to be washing the clothes. So that's kind of one element. And I also want to add this too, this element of, so for many years I inspected asbestos abatement operations. And unfortunately, there was a pattern that I saw firsthand. And just this, unfortunately, like this carelessness, this ignorance, or lack of incentive for abatement workers to do the job properly. And what I mean by that is, in a demolition environment, if the building is going to be demolished, there's no confirmatory samples because, say, half the building is already open. It's going to be demolished anyways. But where is the incentive, right? And I mean, in my health and safety career, I've shut down many sites, risking my job, but not caring because I care more about humans. And
Yes.
I want to be able to sleep at night.
Yeah.
And never got a thank you. That's okay. And many people weren't happy about that because in turn, that means, delayed timelines and it costs money. And yet I often wonder, how did we come to a place where our fellow humans are just considered numbers and not human beings? Like that lack of care, right? That lack of care that I've seen through my safety career is just astounding, and we've got to do better. But sometimes it's speaking to management, whether you're a manager or just a worker, about the potential cost of a workplace injury, illness, or fatality, or even just unwanted press, but how you speak their language. Typically that's money. Show me the numbers, right? And even if your direct report doesn't care, you always have an option to go up the ladder or create a case study, right? And I feel, if I'm speaking to senior management or an owner, if no one is reporting something, that is a likely leading indicator of a red flag. Do people not feel safe to report? Because if nobody's reporting something, we're not being proactive and something could happen and we might be blindsided. Why do people not feel safe enough, right?
Yeah.
To be able to come forward. And that is where so often physical safety in the workplace is connected to psychological safety. If a worker doesn't feel safe enough to report, they're not going to.
Right.
Right? And
yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, and another element I've noticed as well is most managers or supervisors don't have proper leadership or management training. And what I mean by that is, okay, not just an hour online. That's not going to teach you how to have difficult conversations or to have empathy or compassion or emotional intelligence, or just simply how to talk to people and navigate those difficult conversations. That takes time, right?
Right. Yes.
And this is all like a thread and a component of building a safety culture, right? Leading with the intent of being fair rather than being liked or, being a tyrant, which I've seen throughout my career as well, right? But it's almost like if you don't have that core element of leadership training for everyone's a leader of their own job. It's almost like giving somebody the keys to a crane without them having an operator ticket.
No, I think and I was going to say, like, it comes down to culture. I think that you have to see maybe a manager pause, stop some work to ask some questions, or you need to be able to see, okay, it's okay to take a minute and just ask a question and make sure, oh, this seems unsafe, and then wait for the explanation so I think that's so important that you bring that up, that it comes back to the whole culture of the whole company and the industry and everything. Yeah, to make it okay for employees to speak up and ask questions, and absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And I think your employees are your structure and your infrastructure, really. And if they don't feel supported, you basically have a workplace built on like sand, really, right? If they don't feel safe enough to come forward, they're just, right? And if they can come forward, they could be saving you money. They could be saving you lawsuits. They could be creating efficiencies. But if there's an unwillingness to listen or even just to see their perspective, that can be a concern, where most often a worker's just wanting to communicate that because they want to feel supported and they see an issue. They just want to be heard.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, for sure. So did you get into the safety work because of your father, or were you already in it while your dad was like currently working in his job? I was just curious if you,
Yeah, great question. Well, I initially started off with environmental management, and then that quickly came into health and safety for my career. But with my father's guidance, that's how I came into it. And then in my personal life, watching my father's illness and, his death with asbestos. And then in my day job, in my employment, I'm doing asbestos inspections. I'm, training drivers on asbestos. So it's so interesting that it was in all facets of my life, right? This safety.
Yeah, that's why I wondered if you got into the asbestos because of your father, or if it just kind of happened, interestingly enough, kind of like at the same time. Huh, that's interesting. Would you mind sharing some things about your dad, like just who he was and like a favorite story or something about him? You don't have to if you don't want to, just I'm curious.
Oh, absolutely. My father was an incredible father. He, even prior to me being born, he wanted a little girl so bad. He even bought this little dress. And he said to my mom, I know it's going to be a little girl, and I just want a little girl so bad. And here's this little dress she's going to wear. And he would sing me French lullabies to go to sleep and read me storybooks. And what I thought was so amazing was growing up, I have two older brothers. Each of us would have these personal days, just one-on-one with him. And he would say to us, okay, what do you want to do? Do you want just ice cream? Do you want to go for a hike? Like, it's about you. What do you want to do? So it was just this beautiful time to spend with just him.
Oh, that's so special.
It really, really was. And like, he worked a lot, right? So that was just such just a beautiful way to really, really connect with him. And he was just so encouraging and positive, and just his outlook on life was just very encouraging. And yeah, he worked out every day. He loved it and just loved his job so much. And yeah, it was just an incredible father. I appreciate so much.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It was nice to hear, the human side about your dad. And it's not just someone who got sick from work. Like, it's someone's father, someone's husband, someone's friend. So I think that that's just such a good way to connect the importance of workplace safety to real people, like people that matter.
It's interesting that I can appreciate as well, not that he passed away, but since he passed away, how certain life cycles change and how the relationship with my mother has become so much stronger with his passing. So it's so interesting how, seasons change, and although something so tragic can happen, sometimes there's beauty that can come from it as well.
Oh, well, that's a very positive way to think of things. That's nice. Is there any last words, thing that you wanted to leave with people about workplace safety, or any final kind of thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think the last thought would be, legacy, if we think about ourselves, is not what we leave behind, it's what we pass forward. So I invite everyone to leave a legacy in every decision you make, whether it's seen or unseen. And then I just wanted to quickly close with the Threads of Life mission and vision, because I just hold that in my heart, where their mission is to help families heal through a community of support and to promote the elimination of life-altering workplace injuries, illnesses, and deaths. And their vision is to lead and inspire a culture shift, as a result of which work-related injuries, illnesses, and deaths are morally, socially, and economically unacceptable.
That's a wonderful way to end it. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing those.
You're welcome.
Whoa. Star Podcast.